It is 2 a.m. in New York, 7 in London, and 4 on a Friday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. This is ARIRANG, Korea's only global network. Pyongyang needs to start showing sincerity through its actions and not its words. That's South Korea's response to North Korea's proposal a day earlier to end all cross-border slandering and reduce military tensions. And Seoul's annual joint military drills with Washington will take place as scheduled next month. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
A day after North Korea made what it called an important proposal to stop cross-border slanging matches, South Korea expressed its regret over Pyongyang's attempts to mislead the South Korean public by distorting the facts. Unification Ministry spokesperson Kim Eui-do said Friday that it was North Korea that violated a similar inter-Korean agreement in the past.
North Korea called for an end to cross-border slandering in its New Year's speech 2 weeks ago, but it still throws insults and threatens South Korea. The North must remember that trust between the two Koreas will be built through action and not through words.
In its proposal Thursday, the North's National Defense Commission suggested the two Koreas stop throwing insults at each other as of January 30th. The North also said it would initiate steps to ease military tensions if Seoul called off its annual joint military exercises with Washington that take place in early spring. This offer was also flatly turned down by the South.
Our military drills are annual defensive training exercises carried out by a sovereign state, and we officially notify neighboring countries, including North Korea, every year, as is the international custom.
In regards to North Korea's nuclear program, Seoul said Pyongyang is threatening peace on the Korean peninsula with its nuclear ambitions, and added the regime must take practical steps towards denuclearization. As for the resumption of family reunions for those separated since the Korean War, South Korea says it is a humanitarian issue that should be dealt with separately from political tensions. It said a swift resumption of the reunions would be a first step toward friendlier inter-Korean relations. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Well, it's almost certain now that Japan will come under greater international pressure to acknowledge its wartime atrocities after the U.S. House and now the Senate passed a bill that urges Japan to apologize for its sexual enslavement of women during World War II. Our Han Da-eun has more on this historic development.
The U.S. Senate, for the first time in the history of U.S. legislation, has included the issue of the so-called comfort women in its spending bill. On Thursday local time, the Senate passed a bill that calls on the Japanese government to stick to a 2007 resolution which urged Tokyo to issue an official apology for its wartime sexual enslavement of women. The bill also calls on the U.S. Secretary of State to encourage Japan to address the issues raised in the resolution. Comfort women euphemistically refers to women forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during the Second World War. An estimated 200,000 women, mostly Korean, are known to have been abused as sex slaves by Japanese troops in the early 20th century. The bill will be taken to the White House for President Barack Obama's signature on Friday. Despite such an unprecedented call from the U.S. to apologize, some Japanese politicians are going in the opposite direction. A group of Japanese lawmakers who claim a comfort woman statue erected in the U.S. city of Glendale should be removed stormed into Glendale City Hall on Thursday to file a complaint. City officials, however, refused to meet them, saying there was no reason to remove the statue as it was built for humanitarian reasons. But the Japanese group didn't stop here. They waved Japanese flags and took pictures in front of the statue to the shock of passers-by. Attention is now focused on how the Japanese government will react following Washington's passing of the bill. Han Da-eun, ARIRANG News.
And in the state of Virginia, a bill that would require the body of water between Korea and Japan to be identified as both the East Sea and the Sea of Japan in local public school textbooks is moving through the state legislature. The bill submitted by Democrat David Marsden was passed on Thursday with bipartisan support in a vote of 9-4 by the Virginia Senate's Education and Health Committee. Now, if passed by the full Senate and the lower house of the legislature, the bill could take effect as early as July. This is the second attempt to pass the bill after it was voted down 2 years ago. Japan is reportedly trying to block the bill by actively lobbying Virginia lawmakers in both the upper and lower houses. Korea considers the name Sea of Japan as legacy of Japan's imperialistic past. Now, back here in this country, 3 sitting lawmakers have lost their seats in Korea's parliament after the Supreme Court on Thursday found them guilty of illegal electioneering. This means the rival parties will have to prepare for by-elections on top of local elections set for June. ARIRANG's parliamentary correspondent Kim Eui-do reports.
It was the last thing Korea's major political parties wanted. But with the removal of 3 lawmakers on Thursday, by-elections will have to be held. The lawmakers told to clear their desks were found guilty of illegal electioneering ahead of the 2012 general elections. One of the 3 was a proportional representative, which means the person next in line on the ruling party's proportional representation ticket will automatically assume her position. But the constituencies previously represented by the 2 other lawmakers will have to elect a new lawmaker in July. At least 6 other lawmakers face the possibility of losing their seats on similar illegal electioneering charges and are awaiting the Supreme Court's final verdict. Political watchers say the shakeup means up to 15 seats could be up for grabs for the July by-election. By-elections are usually held twice a year in April and in October. But this year, the first by-election should be held on July 30th. This is because of a special provision that says a by-election should be held the first Wednesday that falls 50 days after local elections. This means, theoretically, that Korea will have 3 elections in the span of 5 months. The June 4th local elections, a by-election on July 30th, and another by-election on October 29th. The rival parties agree that they should reduce the number of elections from the current 3 to 2, but they differ on how to go about it. The ruling Sincerity party says the June local elections and the July by-election should be combined and held together in June. But the main opposition Democratic Party says the 2 by-elections should be combined and held in October. The rival parties have agreed to discuss the matter next week at the Special Parliamentary Committee to Reform Politics. Although both parties say their proposal is the best to reduce administrative costs and voter fatigue, pundits say their own political interests have certainly been taken into consideration. Kim Eui-do, ARIRANG News.
Now, Korean officials have confirmed an outbreak of avian influenza in the southern part of the country in the nation's first case of the virus since 2011. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs said Friday that it had confirmed the presence of the H5N1 virus in poultry at a farm in Gochang, Jeollabuk-do province. Now, the AI case was first reported on Thursday, prompting provincial authorities to cull all 20,000 ducks there, and access to the area has been restricted since. Farms in other provinces that have recently bought ducks from the Gochang farm are also taking precautionary measures against the virus. Korea's last avian influenza outbreak resulted in the culling of 3 million birds back in 2011. Now, shifting our focus, with the once red-hot smartphone market settling into slower growth, the information technology industry will explore new frontiers this year. In this last of our 5-part series on industry, UDN tells us what's up and coming in the IT sector.
2014 will be the year when wearable technology takes off. Samsung burst onto the smartwatch scene last year.
Hey, pretty ladies.
But the electronic giant's tagline haven't really worked with consumers. The company recently rolled out an upgraded Galaxy Gear smartwatch that allows users to control home appliances by remote. And with the Apple iWatch and Google Glass due to hit shelves this year, the stage has been set for a fierce competition to win consumers over with the latest wearable gadgets.
We need to build our own software for wearables. While Samsung's smartwatch is powered by Google Android, Google Glass uses its own software.
Korean companies are also jumping into another hot battleground this year, the so-called IoT market, or Internet of Things, connecting objects to objects. Take this service, for example. Press a button on your smartphone, and your car engine starts. If someone tries to break into your car, an alarm goes off in the car and on your smartphone.
By combining our IoT technology and a car servicing company, we've created a new service that allows you to monitor your car wherever you are.
Now, there's a familiar area in which electronics companies will try to make a comeback, and that's TVs. Ultra-high-definition TVs, to be exact. Ultra HD TVs offer 4 times the resolution of regular HD TVs, and the technology is expected to be the main driver of TV sales this year, especially with the upcoming Winter Olympics and World Cup. IT products by Samsung and other Korean companies were major contributors to the Korean economy in 2013.
Exports of IT products reached a record high last year, making up nearly a third of the country's overall exports. But Korea faces new challenges this year, with smartphones no longer considered a safe cash cow. The big question is, will Korean players remain as movers and shakers of the industry? Yurian, ARIRANG News.
Now we turn to business today. First, a look at the local bourse. Seoul shares slipped to a one-week closing low on Friday after downbeat U.S. corporate results chilled risk sentiment ahead of domestic earnings reports due next week. Offshore investors sold a net 100.2 billion won, that's roughly $94 million worth of Kospi shares, weighing on the main bourse. At the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi closed down nearly 0.7% at 1944, its lowest close since January 10th. But the Kospi rose 0.3% for the week, posting its first weekly gain of the year. The tech-heavy Kazakh finished nearly flat, while on the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency closed stronger against the greenback at roughly 1,060 won. Now, Korean steelmaker POSCO, the 5th largest steelmaker in the world, has tapped Kwon Oh-jun to be its new chief executive as the company seeks a way out of a protracted global slump in the steel industry. Let's take a closer look at this latest appointment, and for that we have Dr. Kim Eui-do, head of KLMP Consulting and our regular commentator on this program, joining me live in the studio. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
Now, so this 63-year-old currently POSCO's chief technology officer, now his appointment as the new CEO of POSCO.
Right.
Opinions seem divided. Some are surprised, some say it's been widely expected. Your take on that?
Widely expected, I'm not so sure, but there seems to be a factor or element of continuation in the sense that in the past, despite all this political wrangling and dispute and all these rumors, recent choices of POSCO chairman have been those people who built their career inside POSCO. So there is an element of continuity, but real big difference this time because Mr. Kwon is a technology person, and that's very different indeed. And usually these in the past former chairmen have built their careers in management, having exposures to planning, finance, and other kinds of strategy, build up, or even being in charge of some of these key locations. POSCO has 2 key locations. One is Pohang and Gwangyang. They have their steel mills, and those people who are in charge of these steel mills were promoted later on as a part of their career, and they were later on promoted as the chairman. But this time, Mr. Kwon does not have that, experience. He was the head of research centers so far and real technology man. So in that sense, this seems to be a choice of technology, engineering, and innovation over management, if you will. So this is a very different kind of effort, and they're saying this is a new kind of effort to renew the corporation as a choice made by this special committee that was set up to select the chairman. This is, by the way, POSCO is no longer a company where government has its shares, but this is one of the leading so-called kind of like public corporation in the sense that a lot of shareholders are in it. So this is a very innovative, new kinds of efforts they're saying. And in the past, the chairmen were mostly the people who were visibly outside, active outside and all that. But Mr. Kwon was not someone that a lot of people have heard the name of before. So in that sense, very different kind of new choice.
So perhaps it's the company's supposedly willingness to focus more on its expertise and specialty in technology rather than social management.
Right,
I
suppose, yeah.
All right. So how does this appointment compare with previous appointments? You just mentioned one factor.
Right. We have had really big names as the head of POSCO so far. Of course, the founder himself was a very big name. Park Tae-jun was the one who actually made POSCO possible, and he was a former military person. So in that sense, it was very interesting. But we have to keep in mind that his career began under Park Chung-hee administration, which was a former military, personnel who made up this kind of overall makeup of it. And so founder himself was very unique. And Mr. Kwon will be the 8th chairman in the history of POSCO. And there was one exception ever since the founder himself. There was one exception, the 4th choice, Kim Man-jae, who was heading POSCO during the mid until late 90s, was actually former Deputy Prime Minister of Economy and former government official. So he was a kind of like a unique case. But other cases, as I mentioned before, even though we understand in the Korean history, the head of POSCO himself is a choice that's heavily politically influenced. Even though, because of that, despite those facts, the choices so far, the 7th chairman, the previous one, Jung Jun-yang, and the 6th, Lee Gu-taek, 5th, Yoo Sang-bo, these were all POSCO executives who built their career based on very wide spectrum of their experiences in management. And once again, Mr. Kwon Ho-jun is very different in the sense that he's a very technology man.
Of course, we are talking about the new chief of POSCO because of, I suppose, the significance of this company in Korean economy.
Yeah.
I mean, POSCO was one of the front runners in building the Korean economy as we see it today. Now, for this chairman position this time around, who were his competitors?
Just like every time in the past, like all these big names in Korean business and economic policy-making circles, their names are being aired. And this time, the names, very old names, include Kim Jong-in, who was actually heading Park Geun-hye's election camp as the former chief economic policy secretary in Cheongwade before, and one of the most well-known names of the economic policy-making here was one of the names. And then Kim Won-gil, one of the very senior politician in politics himself, was also named. And Jin Yum, one of the big names once again in policy-making circles, who was a former, I think, Deputy Prime Minister of Economy. And also he has extensive experience in management in the case of Kia in the past. So those were names. And at the end, there were some other names added, including the current head of KOTRA as well. So it looks like a heated competition, and the outcome itself is something that a lot of people were surprised by.
Right. So apparently this Mr. Kwon Ho-jun, he beat out very big political names, and he became the final choice. What would you say the main factor was? Well,
I think government and overall the business community here in Korea wanted to send a kind of message to the outside world, including Korea and perhaps globally as well. That is, this is a new time for Korea's giant corporations here. That innovation matters here, and they're saying now, all after the facts, Mr. Kwon Ho-jun is a perfect choice to introduce innovation and let POSCO branch out in different fields other than just making steels and like different kinds of new materials development and all that, based on his education, training, as well as his career so far. He's a technology man, and this is a time for POSCO to venture into new technology areas. So that probably is the explanation, all after the facts.
So the key challenge would be for this former engineer would be creating a new growth path for this company. Now, what are some challenges that lie ahead for him?
The thing is, POSCO has kind of a classical dilemma as a corporation here. Let's bring up some numbers here that we have prepared. Overall, POSCO's money making itself has not been doing that well. As you can see here, operation profit rate itself, of course, that's the percentage of the operating profit as compared to the size of revenue. And that has been declining. And overall revenue itself has been declining, and the net profit also has been declining as well. So indeed, POSCO faces this challenge in terms of let's just simply making money here. So indeed, to what extent this technology man can actually make a difference in terms of making sure that POSCO will make more money in the future will be a big challenge. And second challenge is what I have already mentioned, helping POSCO finding new path in terms of making POSCO perhaps as a new kind of business group that's well positioned in not just the steel making but also overall energy business as a whole will be a key challenge. So many eyes will be closely watching in terms of the success of Mr. Kwon Ho-jun as the new chairman of POSCO.
And how he engineers the new growth path for this world's 5th largest steel maker and Asia's 4th largest.
Right, I like the word choice, engineer.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Kim Eui-do, for today and all of this week, and we will see you back here on Monday.
Okay.
With rapid changes in the global economy, up-to-date business and financial news has never been more essential. See what's making markets tick around the globe. We speak to the experts and cover the biggest financial stories.
North Korea provocation.
Quite good. We received a lot of positive feedback, especially from those abroad.
Elsewhere across the globe, turnout was low, but the roughly 40% of Egyptians who did head to the polls this week overwhelmingly backed the interim government's new constitution. Well, supporters of ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi and his Muslim Brotherhood boycotted the vote. Son Jung-in has the details.
Preliminary tallies indicate that more than 90% of the people who voted in Egypt are in support of the interim government's newly proposed constitution, according to state media reports. Egyptians formed long lines outside polling stations in major urban areas on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the turnout in Cairo and Alexandria was about 40%, which is higher than in a 2012 referendum on the Islamist-backed constitution. It was the first vote since Islamist President Mohamed Morsi was ousted by the military last July. The new constitution guarantees greater protection for the freedoms of belief and speech. It also guarantees equality between men and women and bans political parties from being formed based on religion, race, or geography. The overwhelming outcome nudges Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi a step closer to running for president. Experts say Sisi, who is extremely popular among his supporters, appears the only serious candidate, but he hasn't yet indicated whether he will run. The vote did not come without some resistance from Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood, which had called for a boycott. On the first day of voting, 9 people died in clashes involving Morsi's supporters. And on Thursday, students rallied outside the University of Cairo, resulting in confrontations with security forces that left 1 person dead and 4 injured. Some 400 people are said to have been arrested during the 2-day referendum for disrupting the vote. Mohamed Morsi, who was Egypt's first democratically elected president, is being held in jail in Alexandria and faces several criminal charges relating to his time in office. The Election Commission said the official results of the referendum will be announced Saturday evening local time, when it will also announce the date for presidential and parliamentary elections. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Now, a total fire ban was issued on Friday in southeastern Australia, which is facing some of its worst fire conditions in 5 years. Well, scorching temperatures have set bushfires across swaths of the region, with 2 forming a 15-square-kilometer blaze that threatened a popular national park in the state of Victoria. Emergency warnings have been issued for fires in the eastern part of the state, and residents have been urged to evacuate in the northwest. Adelaide was declared the hottest city in the world on Thursday with a temperature of 44.2 degrees Celsius. Matches were suspended at the Australian Open in Melbourne, with temperatures there reaching nearly 44 degrees. Meanwhile, dust levels in Beijing have dropped since yesterday, when they were at their highest since January of last year. The U.S. Embassy said the level of ultrafine dust particles in Beijing on Friday was hovering at 160 micrograms per cubic meter. That's much less than the more than 670 micrograms per cubic meter recorded on Thursday. And the figure is 27 times the level recommended by the World Health Organization, and it caused Chinese officials to close roads because of reduced visibility. Well, the dust has also made its way to Korea, where the government issued its first ultrafine dust warning of the year earlier today in the nation's capital and the surrounding Gyeonggi region. The particulate levels in the capital region are 3 times higher than what's considered safe by the WHO. The winds have blown some of the dust away and brought particulate levels down since this morning. And that brings us to the end of this newscast, but stay tuned to ARIRANG. We have a lot more coming your way on Early Edition at 6.